Most of the news that gets pushed to you is pretty dystopian, and most of the social media that gets pushed to you is pretty dystopian. And that's because of the way the algorithms are programmed to really capture your attention.
My father has been in the shipping and logistics business ever since before I was born, basically. Oftentimes you get into environment, you find what are the most competitive people trying to pursue, and then you somehow tell your brain that that's actually what I want. When is the solar takeoff going to be happening? Many folks may already know this. 90% decline in costs over the past 10 years in solar, something like 85% for batteries. And then this Ember report comes out that between 2023 and 2024, the amount of solar that Africa has imported from China has increased by 60%. Kenya, as an entire country, has like 3 gigawatts of power. So, raise the money. It's a beautiful and powerful thing. It's called the Harambe spirit. It's in our shield.
I actually think that AI is going to lead to an understanding of the divine.
The first computer that we ever got was IBM 486 with 4 megabytes of RAM, 170 megabytes of storage, and it felt like plenty. Every doomsayer to date has been wrong.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Love Conquers Fear. I am so excited about today's episode. We're going to dive into so many amazing topics, from the continent of Africa to the country of Kenya to energy with an incredible friend. But first, I just want to give some news. So this week, which will be dated by the time you see this, I'm actually publishing a novella named The Lattice. And this is the 3 short stories that I've been telling you about that I've gotten a lot of joy writing these. These stories are really a positive view of how we can make it to the age of abundance for all. And they build on each other with a protagonist, Dr. Alexander Bliss, who really discovers a key to waking up humanity collectively. And we make it to the age of abundance for all. And then all these amazing things happen as a result in terms of the way we evolve across the universe. So it's a lot of fun. It's a science fiction story, a novella, and I had a blast writing it. And feel free to support it if you feel so moved. It's going to be available on Amazon by the time you see this, and it's different than the type of science fiction you've read, because most of the science fiction out there is pretty dystopian. Frankly, most of the news that gets pushed to you is pretty dystopian, and most of the social media that gets pushed to you is pretty dystopian. And that's because of the way the algorithms are programmed to really capture your attention. Essentially, when you have algorithms that are trying to target monetization through advertising, the fastest way they can do that is to really target your amygdala. And your amygdala is based on fear in terms of the way we evolved. And so it pays a lot of attention to threats. And that's why they push all those threats to you constantly. And I'm a big fan of the free press, to be clear, but ultimately, if you're just whipsawed constantly by negative media and negative social media, it gives you a false pretense of what is actually going on with humanity. The reality is, in a world of 8.2 billion people, every day there's mostly acts of love and connection and beauty. But those aren't exceptional. Those aren't news. And news, by definition, is an exception. And so they're pushing the exceptions to you, the latest murder, the latest tragedy. And that's going to get you to click. And one of the ways that I know this is one of my friends is the founder of the Progress Network, which I highly recommend you subscribe to. You can just Google the Progress Network. Zachary Karabell is his name. He is going to be on the Love Conquers Fear podcast. And I remember when Zachary was celebrating that they got to, I think the milestone was 50,000 subscribers. And I was a very early subscriber, and I think it took them something like 3 or 4 years to get there. Whereas if you're the New York Times and you're pushing the latest story about some abduction, that's going to get to 50,000 readers very, very quickly, because it's so exceptional in a bad way. So you really have to deprogram and reprogram yourself to tune in to all the latest scientific breakthroughs that the Progress Network covers, all the amazing acts of beauty that really are exceptional. and all of the incredible things happening in a world of 8.2 billion. There are many, many incredible things happening constantly, and it'll give you a different view overall of humanity. And ultimately, that'll change you from the inside, and that's part of what we need to do. And what my book that I'm writing, which is called Love Conquers Fear, Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All, covers in part 3, which is about transformation. How does humanity transform so that ultimately we can collectively make it together versus the zero-sum, fear-based scarcity mindset that currently rules over humanity. And that's a big problem when we're dealing with accelerating technologies like this. But I'm going to get into all of that with John Kidenda. So, hey, John, it's good to have you here.
Very nice to meet the audience.
Yeah.
We've been having conversations for a long time.
I know.
It's good to finally get it to a larger audience.
Yeah. It's so much fun. Like I always love our hikes together. And we're just like jamming, like we just don't even stop for a pause.
Yeah, before you know it, it's over and we're programming the next one.
Yeah. So, going in the Wayback Machine, you and I, you worked at Bazaarvoice, right? That was the way we originally met.
Yeah. It was an internship. It's actually a funny story because how I ended up at Bazaarvoice was sort of like the turn of a tragedy.
Right.
Because a good friend and mentor of mine, Rick Reeder, knew the team at Bazaarvoice, and I had been interning. I'd been at UT. I went to UT for my undergrad, Hookham Horns.
Yeah.
Loved the experience. Started off at the engineering school and finished at the business school doing the engineering route to business program. And while at the business school, I spent 3 summers interning in investment banking, and was all set to join Merrill Lynch in New York. At the end of that process, got my full-time offer, accepted it before the fall semester began.
All right.
And this was September of 2008.
Oh, I remember what happened then. That was not the best year.
Not a very auspicious time to be looking at Wall Street.
Yes.
And so long story short, by March of the next year, Merrill is no longer existing as an independent investment bank. It's been
this is after Lehman Brothers went out of business.
Lehman Brothers goes out of business. Bank of America basically saves Merrill by purchasing it.
Yeah. Goldman Sachs almost went out of business.
Exactly.
I mean, that was when Warren Buffett
steps in.
Yeah.
And saves the day. But the consequence of that was that basically Merrill, now Bank of America, had to rescind all their offers to international students. And this was done in March, and I'm graduating in like May of that year.
Right.
And I've obviously not been recruiting in the fall semester because I accepted my offer. And so this begins a scramble that ends with me extending my stay at UT for 1 more semester so that I can participate in the next fall recruiting season. And that summer is when I ended up at Bazaarvoice. And so it all ended up working out great. I ended up, instead of, moving up to New York, stayed here, worked for a healthcare tech company here in Austin, got to stay for another 3 years, which was very, very formative for me.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you working at Bazaarvoice. Those were, and you joined us during really amazing years. So those were the highest growth years.
Exactly. It's an exciting.
Yeah, it really was. So going back in time, I want to start with your childhood. Where did you grow up, and tell me about the early influences and early career and schooling and all that stuff.
No, I was born in Kenya, in Nairobi, the capital of Kenya. The family moved fairly early on. I was only 1 year old, to Mombasa, which is at the coast. My father has been in the shipping and logistics business ever since before I was born, basically. And he moved down there to take the leadership of what is now one of the large shipping and logistics firms out of Kenya. But at the time was, a tiny operation. The first company car was our personal car. It was very much an entrepreneurial move to the coast, and I grew up there until I was 14. At which point, I moved back to the Nairobi area for high school. The way high school works in Kenya, everybody across the entire country, as long as you're doing the national education system, which is called the 844 system, 8 years of primary school, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. As long as you're doing that system, at the end of the first 8 years, everybody takes the same exam across the entire country, and that's used to rank everybody.
Wow. Boy, that's kind of intense.
Yeah. It is kind of intense for such a young kid, and it can be very.
What age is that?
So you're in eighth grade.
Okay, in eighth grade.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And so you're really young, 14 is, and it's a very intense experience, but it's also very formative for those people. And the results that you get from there determine whether you go to what's called a national school, a provincial school, or a district school. These are all public schools funded by the government and alumni donations oftentimes.
Yeah.
And they all have different pedigrees. And the main distinction with the national schools is that they have a mandate to pull students from all corners of the country, which I think is actually really compelling as a thesis, because people forget how young these countries are. Kenya achieved independence in 1963. It's a very young country. Like my parents were alive, and can remember the country becoming a country. Right. And so how do you stitch together a country that is not, doesn't have the same visceral realness of a country that's been around for like 200 years, and everybody just takes it for a fact that this is where they're from. And I think the national school system actually does a really big job in doing that, because it creates a conduit through which smart kids from across the entire country, from very different socioeconomic backgrounds, can meet each other. Often for the first time, they're meeting people from a different tribe, from a different socioeconomic level. They're all coming together in this boarding school, wearing the same uniform, bunking together, and getting to sort of dispel all these ideas that they might have of each other, and building true legitimate friendships.
Right.
And so anyway, long story short, I went to a high school called the Alliance High School in Kenya, which happens to be the oldest high school for Black Kenyans. Every high school prior to that, to the formation of Alliance, which will soon be 100 years old, if not 100, a little longer, was reserved for British expatriates during the colonial period. So it has a very deep and rich alumni base. I went to that school and built lots of lifelong friendships. And then graduated, spent 2 years sort of on sabbatical, doing all kinds of things, working at one of the early internet companies in Kenya called Three Mice, and built some of the.
It's called Three Mice.
Three Mice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
It was back when, I don't know if you remember building websites with Dreamweaver.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, framing and all this.
Yeah.
So I
was coding HTML too, like the hard way.
Exactly.
Pre any of those tools.
Yeah. No, and this was, super. I mean, kudos to the parents who gave me exposure to these things. Back when computer lessons meant basic, and really MS DOS type of interactions. But worked at that company, built some of the early corporate websites in Kenya with that company. Had a great experience. Then got accepted to UT. Didn't know anything about Austin. Didn't even know, when somebody gave me at the airport the UT hat with the Longhorn, that this was like the school mascot. Right. I just knew that it was a top 10 engineering school, and it was tied for A&M actually for affordability.
All right.
And so packed my bags and came out to the US. That was actually my second trip to the US. My first one was through an exchange program with my high school.
Yeah.
Between my high school and a school called Brooks, the Brooks School in North Andover, Massachusetts,
Okay.
which was super formative. And that's when I took my first, they would pay for you to take your SATs and just expose you to just a completely different world. You
All
know, it's this is this is a school that, you know, competes in athletics with Exeter and Phillips Academy and all these. It's a very rarefied part of society, even within the US. And so it was mind expanding in lots of ways. But big thing that they did was encourage you to take the SATs while you were there and pay for it. And yeah, so came out here, started off at the engineering school before it was the Cockrell School, in the Double E building, dungeon, in a basement. Halfway through my program, found out about the engineering route to business program, and just felt like it was absolutely the right fit for me. From what I'd learned so far at the school, so I'm about 2.5 years in, transferred to that program and graduated from the McCombs School.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually keynoting the alumni event on September 19th. Which I'm so honored to do. And you know, at UT is where I met my wife. I met her in my freshman year, and it took me all the way until our senior year to convince her to go out with me. But we've been married 29 years. You know, hey, entrepreneurship, as you know, is like all about persistence. You know?
No, you need the value you were bringing to the table.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I was hoping she would.
Eventually, you were.
Right.
Yeah. No, but yeah, you know, McCombs is a special place.
Yeah.
In my heart. And so does UT. And it just, their entire experience was great.
Yeah.
Where I met Rick, who I mentioned previously.
Was he like a mentor or something there? Or he was...
Yes, he was a Texas X's mentor.
Okay.
That's how we initially met. They just have, you know, lists of people who are into meeting students.
Yeah.
As an engineering student, he was working at Dell at the time. He was one of the people who was listed. I said I would love to connect, and we were blind match. He took me on a tour of the Dell facility. I think back then they were still making computers in Austin. I don't know if they still physically do that.
Yeah.
But it was an eye-opening experience. And then we just stayed in touch, and he became a good friend. And halfway through my program, my mom fell sick, and financial support from home basically dried up at that point, because it was being directed to clearly more urgent needs. And he stepped up and formed the African Leadership Bridge, which is the scholarship foundation that I'm on the board of and help grow.
That's awesome.
Right now. And that's really what enabled me to finish college. And since then, through the African Leadership Bridge, we've we put 6 students through colleges in the US, 17 through colleges in Nigeria. Just last year, we became the first Africa-focused endowed scholarship at UT. Our 15-year relationship with the global office.
That's awesome.
Just began with a completely blind match by the Texas X's organization. So, you know, I mean, I think that to me actually underscores the value of people who build that type of community. You know? People who volunteer their time to speak to students, people who keep the UT alumni community together, people who build other types of community of shared interest.
Yeah.
It makes such a huge difference.
That's awesome. And then, you know, following UT, obviously you came to Bazaarvoice.
Yeah.
And then after that, you went into a health tech company. So
with a company called the Advisory Board Company.
Yeah.
Subsequently renamed Advisory, and I think
I actually know that company. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I joined Advisory. I worked with them for 3 years. Very formative, incredible opportunity to stay in Austin and experience a different kind of Austin. And then applied and got accepted to the Kennedy School at Harvard. They have an incredible program called the MPA program, Masters in Public Administration in International Development, which is kind of like an econometrics master's smashed into like a public policy master's. Very international, very quantitatively rigorous. The smallest program at the Kennedy School, but also more often than not the most diverse and international. I think our year was the largest group that they had accepted to that date.
Mm-hmm.
It was 70 people. I think there were at least 30 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah, in
Wow.
class. And so it's in
That's talking about diverse. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. So when you're reading about international development and you're talking about, oh, this policy worked or didn't work here, or this initiative does or doesn't work here, whether it's Colombia or Iran or Korea, there's somebody in the class who can speak, from a local's perspective on that policy. And you just enrich the conversation to a level that it's frankly difficult to find in any other space.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
What were maybe the highlight moments for you in that program at Harvard?
I think my second year, I co-chaired the Africa Development Conference.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the highlights I think were associated with that. One, as part of that whole experience, we organized a spring break trip to Cameroon,
Mm-hmm.
and brought people from all different walks of life. Many of them to their on their first Africa trip, to a part of Africa that even I was unfamiliar with, and just found that experience so enriching because I was watching other people learn about my continent,
Right.
and they were enriching my experience. I was enriching theirs, and that I found very, very fulfilling. The conference itself was amazingly successful. We got the president of Niger to come and speak as our keynote speaker, and he, did a phenomenal job presenting his vision for his country in a very, very difficult context. Niger is one of the poorest countries in Africa and in the world, in a very difficult neighborhood, with challenges with Boko Haram and other Al Qaeda affiliates to the north. Very rich in natural resources. Uranium is a big resource that they mine there. And so just hearing for firsthand from somebody who can articulate the challenges of trying to navigate such an environment to produce a positive outcome for your people was really, really fulfilling. And I deeply, deeply enjoyed that. And then I think third, together with a very gregarious friend of mine called Josh, who is South African, we set up this morning Africa talk series, which had we known in advance how difficult it would be to keep a 7 a.m. appointment,
right.
every week through the winters, and had we known that Snowmageddon was going to happen while we were in school,
Right.
might not have signed up for, but we would trudge through the snow. At 6:45, you're walking across the quad. You're like, why am I doing this?
Right.
In my bed right now. You just finish problem sets after midnight, and you'd walk into this little library room at the Kennedy School, and you'd see 15 to 20 other people in parkers, shedding them, and you'd sit down and had the most compelling conversations about the continent.
Wow.
First thing in the morning.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And you leave every time saying like, why did I even question why it's coming here? And it is a very simple thing, but it's still one of the clearest memories from that experience that I take away. And I guess it connects to that previous point about, forming communities of shared interests. It's one of the most enriching things you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any particular interview that you were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we just did that?
Yeah, I think it seemed like, even then, history was happening in real time.
Sure.
As we were speaking. And so I think that the Chibok girls is the kidnapping of the girls in Nigeria happened while we were there, and just having first-hand conversations about that was really deeply meaningful. It made Harvard. You have people from all different walks of life. You have children of presidents there, and you have people who are the first people in their community to go to college, also arriving and having really compelling conversations. So I think just being able to really discuss current affairs with people who are not interested in the hype and the hyperbole and sensationalizing the moment, and are actually often very skeptical of that perspective, because Africa has filled that role in people's heads for so long that it's exhausted a lot of people, like the home of crisis, and so to be able to have intelligent conversations and acknowledge where the challenges are,
right,
but also speak intelligently about the opportunities and where you're seeing significant progress taking place, and have legitimate tested solutions proposed by people who understand the nuance,
right, right.
And understand why so many solutions that are parachuted in from outside don't work. Was just really, really great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Man, good on you for doing that. That's so awesome.
That was fun, yeah.
And then, so what happens after Harvard?
So the reason I even started thinking about going to grad school was I gave myself 10 years, about 2 years into probably, I gave myself 10 years to graduate and go back home, because I had, in that 2 years, had met too many people who, were very successful here. They would come to speak to us on campus. And they'd come from different parts of the world, some from Africa, some from India, from other parts of the world. And too often I heard the refrain that they didn't know how 15 years had passed, how 20 years had passed. And too often I met people who, it seemed that they didn't know how to go back. They had been away so long that home started feeling like a foreign land, and I didn't want that that to happen. So I figured, 10 years, good amount of time. I can study, I can get work experience, which I thought was as much an education as reading the books at college.
Of course.
Yeah, because I do think that the American corporate culture and entrepreneurial environment is a unique unto itself, and you have to immerse yourself in it to understand why it works the way it does and why it performs so exceptionally well. And so I wanted to experience that. And so it was about year 8 when I started thinking, okay, I need a strategy to go back, and I need to go back feeling confident that I'll be useful in some way.
Right.
And that's actually when I started looking for grad programs, and found the MPA program fit exactly. This focused on international development, and I can understand what people have tried before, what's worked, what's not worked, and then hopefully go work on solutions that are more likely than not to succeed. So in the middle of my grad program, I interned with a company called Dalberg, which is development focused strategy consulting firm founded by a few ex-McKinsey people, initially as an organization to specifically aim to bring high-level strategy consulting to the UN, and then grew and broadened its mandate to basically being the consulting company to go to for or development focused work. They had an office in Kenya, helmed by 2 people from my high school.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of how those connections happened, and I interned with them and went and joined them. Worked there for 2.5 years, learned a ton, and one of the things I learned was that I wanted to work on energy. That's when I started I had my first product in the energy space. Prior to that, I was sure I wanted to be on the continent. I knew I was interested in information technology, agriculture, and energy. Didn't know which one I really wanted to work on for the long haul. After my first energy project was clear that this is what I wanted to do, and started looking for opportunities to do that full time, other than just work on whatever consulting project came through.
Yeah.
And that I found a company called PowerGen, renewable energy, which is arguably the leading distributed and energy utility on the continent. They basically build and operate smart renewable mini-grids across the continent. By the time I was leaving them, serving over 250,000 people with clean, reliable power that's more reliable than the power you get from the national grid in pretty much any country that we operate in.
Wow.
Yeah. And so worked there for 7 years, 6-7 years. Started off basically just leading the IT team, ended up as the chief of utility operations, running their assets once they have been financed and built. And learned a ton, worked with incredible people, some of the smartest and most passionate people I've come across, and went on sabbatical in May of last year when my wife was graduating from her PhD and moved back to Austin.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up back here on this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And where'd your wife go to school again?
So she did her undergrad at Stanford, and then she did her master's and PhD at MIT.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because I knew that. It's just so impressive. Like, you guys have checked all the boxes, UT, Harvard, MIT, Stanford.
I do have to work
I'm
a
just,
long time to
it's
say that.
I think I mentioned to you on one of our hikes, I'm like, I'm not worried about your kids being smart.
Indeed. I mean, hopefully we don't put pressure on them. I have a 3.5-year-old and 8-month-old, as you know, and
Yeah.
they're clearly running the household already. So
Right. Yeah. Watch out. Smart kids, they really take over. It's happened here.
yeah.
And so that company, that's where you met Tom Berry, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Cause I, thanks to you, I just met him in New York City. I was just up there with Deborah.
Yeah.
And, gosh, I love that guy. Like, I had such a great connection with him, like you thought I would.
Yes.
So tell me about him and how he helped you. Cause I know he's a big believer in you. If your ears were buzzing this week, he loves you.
Yeah. No, he's a really special guy. He's a special guy. He lived, I really, over time, I've gone to really value, people who, like you, have lived so many lives. You can live vicariously through other people who have just, taken so many turns around the earth. I mean, he's, as you know, an older gentleman who has been to the heights, of the finance world in New York, and still remains in those echelons. But very early on, well before the hype and before Africa's startup scene was routinely raising $2-3 billion a year, I made a commitment to supporting and doing venture in Africa and in India through his entities of capital management. And one of the ventures that he supported really early on was PowerGen, which is this smart mini-grid developer. And he was on the board as a result of that. And so I met him while we were on the board, and he just from the get-go came across as just a straight shooter, somebody who has a lot of wisdom, and has taken the time to distill it,
right,
so that it can be delivered in a way that people who don't have that life experience can digest it and benefit from it, and is not afraid to tell it like it is, which I find often and increasingly is hard to find, especially to people who will tell it like it is with love,
right?
Who are not trying to own you or put you down, but are interested in you not deceiving yourself or being deceived. And I just, that's a quality that I I appreciate a lot. And so
it is rare just because most people
Yeah.
really conflict avoid
Yeah.
a lot. And,
Yeah.
and it's a real gift when you get actual feedback
Yeah.
from the heart, like
Exactly.
someone who really wants you to succeed.
Exactly.
And,
And knows, somebody who's both wise and is willing
yeah,
to tell you, because they're rooting for you.
yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah.
And you can always tell, you can actually feel the energy from someone. Like you can feel the energy. If someone wants you to lose, like you can feel that versus if they want you to win.
Exactly. Yeah. And
I'm a product of many mentors that have given me the energy of wanting me to win.
Exactly.
And I really try to honor them a lot.
Yeah, no, I tell my siblings this all the time. It's the best, really the best thing that you can do in life is find and surround yourself with people who want you to win.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can optimize as much as you want for your success, but just as a matter of statistics, most of the opportunities that are available to you are not going to be in your purview, right? The people who surround you are going to encounter so much more that may be of benefit to you,
right?
That even that it's almost feels irrational to try and maximize every encounter to your personal benefit, because if you're not enriching other people's lives and trying to build them up, then it becomes very difficult to find people who are similarly invested in your success.
Right.
And so find somebody who wants you to win just because they think that the world would be a better place if you succeeded in what you're doing, which again also then speaks to the validity of the mission that you're on, and then is willing to be honest with you and pour some of their wisdom into you is invaluable. It's the same thing that with Rick, who was both a mentor and friend. And these it's funny to me because these end up being sort of the most consequential relationships, and you have no control over when they come into your life and how they pan out. Right. I mean, Rick was somebody in the Texas X office said, "Hey, this guy and this guy,"
Right.
Tom was a random, dinner at a company, Bazaarvoice and you was, a rescinded, offer,
Right.
which is, again, also either speaks to the fact that, I think it was Socrates who used to say you can't really evaluate whether somebody has had a good life until they're gone.
Right.
Because in the moment when I was experiencing the rescinding of that offer, this was the worst thing.
Of course.
The worst thing.
Yeah.
I was investment banking was the path, and for a competitive person, as you might know, oftentimes you get into an environment, you find what are the most competitive people trying to pursue, and then you somehow tell your brain that that's actually what I want.
Right.
That's the thing that will make me feel fulfilled. So I was all in. But in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it enabled me to stay in Austin. It enabled me to meet you. It enabled me to staying in Austin also resulted in me meeting my wife. And so it transformed my life in lots of really positive ways that were, as Job says, you can only connect the dots looking backwards.
Yeah.
It's
so crazy you just said that because I just finished my novella with that last night.
No.
Yes, I did.
Serious?
Yeah. Well, serendipity. I don't actually believe in coincidences anymore. Reading books like the Celestine Prophecy. Now I see so much order to things and this things constantly appearing. Tom was one of those for me. I mean, you saw that for, Love Conquers Fear. You're like, oh my gosh, Tom is going to really be helpful on this. And I have a feeling that he and I are going to be friends for the rest of my life.
That's
That
incredible.
he's all in on the project, and he really agrees with me that humanity has this next 10 to 15 years ultimately for us to make it to this age of abundance for all versus destroy ourselves. And again, I'll just say that I'm mostly in the we're going to make it camp.
Yeah, indeed. No.
So let's talk about the age of abundance for all. One of the things that I talk about in my book, and I mentioned on this podcast, is I was picked up by an Uber driver on the way to give a presentation, actually at MIT, to a group of 50 CEOs, and I was picked up 4:30 in the morning, and the driver's name is Calabu. And Calabu, like, great guy, like we just immediately started talking, even though it was so early, it was awesome. And I was using ChatGPT the whole time to learn about his country of Chad. I knew nothing about Chad. I don't know if you know much about Chad, but, most people in America don't realize that Africa is a huge continent and with many countries. And, it's like asking an American, like, for every single thing that they would know about Mexico or Canada, which most Americans would not know that much about even those countries. And Africa is like so many more. But Chad is a country where the GDP per person is $660. It's really suffering.
Yeah.
It's number 187 out of 189 on the Human Development Index ranking. And as I talked with him, and he's saving up all this money to ultimately bring his wife and kids here, maybe 6 to 7 years from now. And he's sending actually a lot of his money back to support them as well as his parents. And they view him as rich, right? He's like in America driving for Uber, like this guy must just have all types of money versus Chad. And it really crystallized on that Uber drive. I was like, wow, the hope for Chad are robots and this acceleration with AI. Like an NGO going in 10 years from now, being able to build all the clean water supply they need, the solar grid, that ultimately, a lot of people don't realize that the continent of Africa, like, kind of leapfrogged us with mobile. We had all these landlines and all the stuff that didn't make any sense for Africa to adopt. And so they just kind of, jumped over that with mobile. And so, Chad would have an opportunity to just jump over it once we get solar energy to the point through the material science breakthrough where, the battery storage is such and the capture is such that Chad could just create unlimited energy in that country. And the robots could come in and build everything that they need, the desalinization plants for water and all of that, And in the book, I talk about if you can create an oasis in Chad, you could create an oasis anywhere on Earth.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you think about that thesis, and do you agree with me that, let's call it the next 10 to 15 years, we could make it to this age?
Well, I agree and disagree.
Yeah.
So I agree that it is possible. I actually think it is probable. I disagree that it will happen through an NGO.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually, in the last week or two, I've become even more convinced on that thesis because there's an organization called Ember that does really great reporting across the world on energy and energy transition. And they came out with a report last week, I believe, that answered the question that I'd been having in my head for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
When is the solar takeoff going to be happening in Africa? Because you started seeing these dominoes falling, and we've seen, and many folks may already know this, 90% decline in costs over the past 10 years in solar, but something like 85% for batteries. And the prediction for the next decade is another 90% reduction. Like, this is a true, White's law, like curve that is just blasting through every cost floor that we've ever seen, and creating a truly transformational opportunity in energy. And as a consequence, you started seeing just through oftentimes the removal of arcane or restrictive regulation that had prevented people out of their own self-interest procuring these products. Huge explosions in the procurement of solar. Case in point was Pakistan 2 years ago, where they imported something like a quarter of the country's installed base of power in solar panels by private individuals. So they saw all this solar coming in from China, and it wasn't going to industrial traditional utility scale solar plants, right? And so then the question was like, where's this solar going? Because people are buying it, people are shipping it in container loads. And it was just people, once the regulation had been shifted to allow people to self-serve, buying this stuff and just carpeting their factories with these solar panels and generating, for the first time, power that they had control over, right? And when I saw that happening in Pakistan, I was like, this is going to happen in Africa. It is absolutely inevitable. And so waiting for a year, I wasn't seeing anything. And then this Ember report comes out that between the 2024 and the 2023 and 2024, the amount of solar that Africa has imported from China has increased by 60%. That's in 1 year.
Right.
Like 15 gigawatts of solar has been imported into Africa. Kenya as an entire country has like 3 gigawatts of power installed base. So that gives you, and Kenya is one of the top economies in Africa, right? 15 gigawatts of solar panels. The amount of solar panels that has been imported in Sierra Leone alone is equivalent to 61% of the country's installed capacity to generate.
Wow.
It's at such a transformational amount, and there is no sign of slowing down. A lot of the graphs that you see for solar implementation in these countries look like that. It's that hockey stick back to back.
Yeah.
And you know what? Next year it's going to be more. And nobody has coordinated this. Nobody has created some sort of program to get solar into these countries. It is simply, actually, the biggest thing that is going to accelerate this in the next year is probably the One Big Beautiful Act, because what you've seen is the amount of exports from China has gone like into the US has gone like this.
Right.
The amount of exports from China into Africa is going up like that because they're seeking new markets.
Right.
And they are pricing to those markets because there is an imperative to really pump these panels out, because they're also being consumed en masse in China. And so energy abundance, I feel more confident than ever before as of this report, which I'll share with you.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, please. Will happen, and it is happening this decade. And it is happening. It'll be happen in a completely decentralized, bottom-up way, and eventually it will be supported because these countries will see. Most of these countries are net energy importers, whether they're importing oil or they're importing natural gas. That's money that the hard-earned foreign exchange that they get from selling agricultural products or raw materials,
right?
And to get dollars to go and buy this oil to bring into the country to burn, in order to produce energy. They'll realize, okay, I can keep those dollars,
all right,
and we can generate the power here.
Yeah.
And so eventually it will be supported. But what gives me so much hope is that this is happening despite rather than because. And this is, we mentioned this in our walk last day. I am a firm believer that the only solutions that matter are the ones that can happen despite a dysfunctional, regulatory, political environment, because those are the ones that will create the base from which you can create more functioning systems that you can build, the more fragile types of solutions on top of.
Right.
But it tires me so much when people, say things like, "Oh, you know what Africa needs? They need to end corruption. So, you know what Africa needs? They need better leaders." Okay, yeah, okay. So we need better leaders. How do you get from here to there?
Right. Right.
That's what I'm interested in. What is the step that moves us in that direction? Because if I had a magic wand, I would wave that magic wand and have better leaders in Africa. The fact is, we have the leaders that we have.
Right.
The fact is, we have the corruption situation that we have, which, is not novel. Every country in the world has different levels of corruption, right? We need to solve that problem. But if you make solving that problem a prerequisite for improving the livelihoods of the people in Africa or in Kenya, then it's a non-starter. It's a non-starter. And so energy abundance, yes, and it's going to happen from the ground up.
Yeah.
And as you alluded to, because this is a foundational technology, it unlocks so much. It unlocks.
I mean, everything shares with energy.
Yeah, exactly. Everything, every price of everything is the price of the energy that went into producing it.
Right.
And then you can layer on, other things like brand and all these other things. But the fundamental input is energy. And so when you solve energy and bring that cost down, you find out that, we didn't actually have a water problem. We had an energy problem. And now we have energy to desalinate.
All right.
We didn't actually have, an agricultural productivity problem. We had an energy problem.
Right.
Now we can produce hydrogen, make our fertilizer, and make our agriculture more productive. All of these things are just downstream from energy. And so the fact that that base thing is being solved ground up gives me so much hope.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's, in the chapter that I just finished in my book on climate change, on how do we solve climate change with these accelerating technologies, I talked about that the Maslow hierarchy of needs. I was referencing a friend's book, Pablo Solman, who's going to be on this podcast. It's a book called Deep Future. Amazing, amazing book. You should read. And he talks about that the base of the Maslow hierarchy should actually be energy, because everything comes out of that.
Yeah, that's what we have been doing as a species from the beginning.
Yes, with the discovery of fire.
Exactly.
Think about that.
We were like, okay, unlock more calories for the same amount of food, right?
Yes.
And then, we invent agriculture and we can control, and we pay a big cost to be sedentary. We ruin our diet, but the benefit of being able to predictably produce a surplus, an agricultural surplus, is a price we as species choose to pay so that we can build civilization,
Yeah.
And then we invent, fertilizer, we unlock whale oil, and then fossil fuels, and now the ultimate, all of these being transformations of solar energy, as you mentioned on our previous walk. We've just been finding more and more efficient ways to get to how the sun produces energy.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I think is so funny, it like literally made me laugh out loud in this journey I had, is that the sun is staring at us every day, and almost all of its energy doesn't go to use. And of course, it sustains the whole earth, and all of our plant life, and frankly, our life too. But, God put this there, staring this every day, saying, I have provided nearly unlimited energy for you.
Yes.
It's seconds of the sun. If you could just harness all of the power of it, would just take care of us for a massive, massive amount of time.
Yes.
And it's just obvious to me that we're going to crack the code on that. And I think the acceleration, take something like DeepMind and the protein folding problem, AlphaFold and AlphaFold 2. That same type of solutioning through AI running just a massive number of simulations is going to happen with all areas of material science. And we're for sure going to figure out a way to get that curve. I don't know what that law will be called. It won't be Moore's law, it'll be something else, but continue that solar curve, just constantly just driving down to essentially where it's almost free.
Yes.
Because if we have a world of pretty much infinite energy from the sun, then in that type of world, it unlocks tremendous possibility. I mean, this country, America, before we had electricity, is just not even conceivable to us today.
Exactly.
But there are countries in Africa that do not have electricity today, in 2025.
I mean, we were like, when PowerGen, we very quickly became the second largest utility in Sierra Leone. And that's not because we were this massive company. It's because the national utilities had like 150,000 connections.
Yeah.
We got there.
Yeah.
For a country of millions, I think 3 or 4 million at the time. That's the number of people who have connections to the national grid. The capital of Sierra Leone, a significant portion of that capital is powered by a ship that is docked off the coast of Sierra Leone that has giant generators on it and runs wires to shore to power the country. And that, I think that ship is a Turkish ship, not a Sierra Leone ship.
All right.
And so how do you build a functioning economy when your base input is that precarious?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to imagine how transformative this will be for Freetown in Sierra Leone to be energy independent. Because if Freetown doesn't pay its electricity bill on time, that ship can sail away.
Right. Yeah.
How do you build?
Yeah. That is unbelievable.
It's absolutely crazy. But as you think, and that's the capital. So nobody outside of there has electricity. How are they even supposed to begin to get on the journey to access the abundance of knowledge that the world has to offer?
Right.
If they are at that place.
Yeah.
And then flip the switch and not only give access to energy, but make it so that, and sometimes it feels fanciful when you talk about, energy too cheap to meter and things like that. But we forget that there was a time when internet was a luxury. In our lifetimes. I was just at Civil Go before I came out here.
Yeah, great coffee shop.
Great coffee shop, yeah. And I walk in, I order my lemonade, I sit down, and I asked the barista, "Can I have your Wi-Fi password?" Doesn't that tell me that'll be $5?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's just done some.
It wasn't that long ago when I would go into a Wi-Fi cafe in Europe. When I needed Wi-Fi,
I remember cyber cafe.
Cyber cafes.
Exactly.
Yep.
But it is worth it for that institution to provide me free high-speed internet for whatever I want to do. I could watch YouTube on it or whatever, because the cost is so low relative to the convenience that it provides and the attraction that it provides in terms of customers, which is where the real value lies. We didn't get to that place with energy. Where the energy too cheap to meter doesn't mean then there's an organization that somehow has a intrinsic incentive to just provide free energy to people.
Right.
The entities that will be providing energy will be different kinds of entities. Their business model will be built on the services that layer on top of the energy, but the energy itself, it will just be given to you.
Right.
We can get there because this is that type of transformation.
Right.
Like, orders of magnitude shift in the kind or in the price of power, especially as we reorient to the realization that there is massive value to design your industrial processes around an intermittent source of power, right? Because one thing is making storage cheap, and there's people working on that day and night, and tremendous progress being had. But there is so much in a current industrial system that is designed around a world in which energy is expensive, and so the optimization function is wrong in a world where energy is cheap.
Right.
And so when you start designing for a world where energy is cheap, where you start building electrolyzers that don't take rare materials to build the most efficient filter so that you can use the least amount of energy to get the most amount of water and hydrogen out of it, but instead you use cheap, inefficient materials and just use tons of free energy in the middle of the day to do exactly the same thing, the whole system changes.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see that because people are realizing that, and I mean, it's happening here, but in Europe, it's really happening. In Europe, in countries like Spain, hours of negative energy prices are like, it's growing like that. And it's in the summer, in Spain has tons of wind. Even in the autumn and winter, they have multiple hours on a daily basis where people are being paid to take energy.
All right.
And that cannot help but transform an economy.
Yeah, that's so cool. One of the things that, just to bring it back home, given that we're in Austin, Texas right now, is, Texas had a near failure of its power grid because we're on our own little island. We don't work with other states in terms of connecting power. And one of the things that people don't realize that happened as a result of that near tragedy, fortunately it didn't happen, but I heard that it was within hours of failure, is there have been an incredible number of solar starts here. I mean, it is off the charts if people look at it. And so I'm curious how you see the world, because you've thought more about energy than almost anybody I personally know, right? So I'm curious, like, how do you see the world actually transforming? And I'm talking about the US too, like with nearly unlimited energy. Like right now, there's so much talk about the grid being stressed by AI consumption and AI training. But let's just say that problem is solved and we blast past that problem to the point where we have, just abundance of energy everywhere in the world. What are the dream scenarios that you think of that we do with nearly unlimited energy?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of world is that?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting time to be thinking about it, because what we have discovered over the past, 5 years is, we as a society were finding ways to unlock energy, right? But really, if you take that to its logical conclusion in the context of humans, we were finding ways to unlock energy so that we could consume it in the form of food, because we were the only entities we knew of that produced intelligence, right? And so we were transforming energy into intelligence, which was then creating, the world that we live in, the Anthropocene, or whatever you want to call it. And now we have found another path, that through our transformation of energy into intelligence, we have found a way to basically do the same thing in silicon. Right?
Yeah.
And so, because now that we have that direct relationship, there is a direct relationship between energy abundance for all and unlimited intelligence.
Yes.
For all.
Yeah. Unlimited cognitive
abilities.
Yeah.
And that, it's almost impossible to imagine what that means, because just like it's different, it takes a long time for people to adjust to a world where energy is abundant and cheap. Like, so much of our the constraints that have shaped how we think about the world have been constraints around intelligence, right? So I like to think of just the basic things, the simple things that can be solved, because those, to me, are profound enough without even extrapolating that far. We've talked about people don't have electricity. In a lot of countries, the ratio of doctors to people is thousands to one. As in, even if everybody in that country had the means to purchase access to healthcare, it just would not be enough.
Right.
And yet we are rapidly entering a world, and this is happening now, where AI diagnostics is routinely surpassing human level for trained doctors.
Yeah.
It's surpassing not just doctors alone. It is surpassing doctors assisted with AI.
Right.
The AI alone is providing fewer false positives and fewer false negatives. We are getting to the place where, with a cheap cell phone powered by cheap power, most people will have the ability to accurately diagnose their situation. Right? That's before we talk about any sort of material science, that will produce the medicine to heal them. It's hard to imagine. I mentioned that my mom was sick when I was in undergrad. Ended up actually turning out that she had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It took years to get that diagnosis. We had to fly her to South Africa. For the longest time, she had incredible headaches and pain, like that would almost blind one of her eyes. We'd take her to the doctors, and they would diagnose something that ended up not being the root cause of the issue. So we lost so much time. By the time we got the right diagnosis in South Africa, and then took her to India for treatment, which she could have gotten in Kenya, yes, but it would have been way more expensive. In Kenya, in India, they've built a low-cost healthcare system that is, a wonder to behold. For treatment, she was in stage 4.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And, thank God she is in remission, and has been in remission for, going on 20 years now.
Wow.
From stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Wow.
But imagine,
and so much suffering to get to that point. Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that it's not that we didn't have the medicine.
Yeah.
We couldn't diagnose.
Right. My mom passed away from lung cancer. Unfortunately, she didn't make it.
Yes.
But
Sorry to hear it.
I miss her a lot. This is a bit over, I think it's been 14 years now. Yeah. But they kept misdiagnosing the fact that they didn't know that she had a tumor growing that was lung cancer. She never smoked in her entire life. And 10% of women that get lung cancer never smoke. It's like something environmental. And they kept misdiagnosing her as having bronchitis and kept giving her antibiotics. And she would be alive today because it was a very slow growth tumor. But by the time it got diagnosed, it was stage 3. And then we thought that we had it beat, but then unfortunately I went stage 4. And it was just, it was just so sad. Yeah. I will tell you one aside though, that was just incredible. I was, and it's a Bazaarvoice story.
Yes.
So Bazaarvoice, after it went public, we, the stock traded up and we could do a secondary IPO.
Yes.
And so I'm at the office. My mom is in the hospital and not doing well. But I had to meet with these bankers. This takes you back to your investment banking days. Okay. So I was meeting with these bankers about the secondary IPO, and I just had to have that meeting, but my wife was at the hospital. I get out of that meeting, successful meeting. I'm like, I have to go back to the hospital. I just kind of felt it in my soul. I'm driving back. My wife calls me and she says, your mom is passing away right now. I'm going to put you on speaker. I'm on speaker, tears, telling her goodbye. It's just absolutely horrible. And I thought, man, I just missed my mom's passing because of capitalism, which I love capitalism, but I love my mom more than capitalism. But I just keep driving. My wife calls me back 5 minutes later and she says, it's a miracle. They don't know what happened. She's back alive. They're like, nobody knows what's going on.
Wow.
Like they're in uncharted territory here at the hospital.
Yes, yes.
I get there. My mom passes away with me holding her hand, my wife and my sister. And the doctor said, if you don't believe in God now, you really should. Because they're like, we haven't seen that, but that's how much my mom loved. Like, that's how much my mom loved. Like the love I have in my heart came from that unconditional love from her.
That's just so incredible and such a mom thing,
Yes.
Like that's when you realize
I hit the mom jackpot.
It is impossible. It is impossible to understand like the feeling that a mom has for her kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it will jump over the entire doctor's textbook.
Yeah.
And say, nope.
Yeah.
Pause.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Breath's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your point about the news, like, I think this happens so often everywhere, and it's not fodder for news. Because like my mom, similarly, like she went multiple times to India, for treatment, for chemo. She lost so much weight that she was wearing my little sister's clothes. That is just impossible for me to even conceptualize. But she was beating it, and then she came back to Kenya, and she went for a scan, and they said, we found something. And we were like, what is going on? And this was my mom at this point was like, you know what? Like, I don't know how much more of this I can take, right? And we were like, okay, we'll do one more triple, raise the money, it's another great thing about Kenya, this Harambee spirit, where we come together, we raise so much, because there is no, for most people, like insurance that is going to pay for this. Like the community around you is insurance.
Right.
So, raise the money.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. It is like how most people get through life in Kenya. And it's a beautiful and powerful thing. It's called the Harambee spirit. It's in our shield at the bottom. And we take her there, and she goes in, and she's supposed to go in now for surgery slash chemo the next day. So they do the pre-screening. They take her to the hospital. They do all the checks. She comes back to the hotel where she was staying. She goes the next day, And the doctor is looking at her and like, here's your scan.
Mhm.
There is nothing.
Mm.
Like she has her scans from Kenya. She goes there, sits down, and the thing has disappeared. And from that day to today, she's been in remission.
Oh, wow. Well, thank goodness for that. Yeah.
How
Beautiful.
how do you, so yeah, so you're like, yeah, okay, God.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Thank you for,
Okay,
yeah.
I did
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there is, there is, and perhaps, again, there is the profoundness of of the presence of God will be further unlocked by what we are going through right now.
Yeah.
In this explosion of basically cognitive capacity.
Yeah.
It maybe it ends up re-injecting a sense of wonder in
Mhm.
the world that has been lost.
I actually think that AI is going to lead to an understanding of the divine,
Yeah.
and science and spirituality coming back together.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I explore in my short story, my 3 short stories, which starts out with God's final exam.
Yes.
Like I honestly think this is the time, it's this lifetime where we are being awakened to what's at stake. And technology is the catalyst. And technology is the catalyst because we're going to have tools that are so powerful. I mean, as of this recording, it has been 1,013 days since the launch of ChatGPT right now. Like, so think about another 1,013 days in an exponential curve.
Which is why I don't understand anybody who, I don't care at all about what ChatGPT can do right now, even though what it can do is, if you told somebody 3 years ago that it could do what it does now, most people evaluated it 3 years ago and think that ChatGPT is still what they tried 3 years ago, which was not able to add, I don't know, 23 plus, whatever, to 24. They haven't even updated to what it can do now.
Mhm.
I don't want to say, I don't even care what it can do now. Are you seeing this trajectory?
Right. Yeah. And anybody that's been in tech knows because at the beginning of every tech revolution, whether it's mobile, like the initial mobile websites look like horrible. Whether it's the beginning of social, the original social media sites were absolutely horrible, right? Whereas the beginning of printers, like for me, it was like, it just took forever just to print one page, and it was horrible.
I mean, dial.
Yeah, dial-up. My first modem was 110 baud.
Yeah.
I could almost type faster than the text went across the screen.
But the first computer we ever got was IBM 486 with 4 megabytes of RAM, 170 megabytes of storage,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like plenty.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So it's not new. Like,
All right.
we've seen this, and the thing is, every subsequent one has been faster.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like it would be so unusual if this was slower than the previous transition.
Yeah.
Your expectation should be that it's faster, and it is showing you that it is way faster.
Yeah.
So you should expect, the thing that needs to be explained is somebody who thinks that the line is going to go like this, right? And it's been going like this.
Right.
This needs more explanation than this.
Right.
This is the baseline trajectory.
Right. Yeah. It's incredible.
Mm.
And so it sounds like you're pretty positive that we're going to make it to this age of abundance for all.
I am, because, for one thing, every doomsayer to date has been wrong.
Mhm.
I think that the people who are invested in and doing the work to help us get across the finish line will never get as much attention as the people who say, nuke the data centers,
Yeah.
And so,
Well, this goes back to my prior point at the beginning of this,
yeah.
where in the introduction,
Yeah.
where it's,
Yeah.
the most dystopian thing is constantly being fed to us
Exactly.
because that is newsworthy,
Yeah. And not to say there aren't any risks, but there was a risk when we invented fire.
Mm-hmm.
There was a risk when we invented nuclear energy.
Mm-hmm.
There was a risk when we invented cars. If there is no powerful technology that does not have risks,
Mm-hmm.
it is a characteristic of powerful tools
Mm-hmm.
to be risky.
Yeah.
Right. And which is why it is important for us to elevate ourselves as we are bringing this tool into existence.
Yeah.
Right. But we forget how many opportunities we have had for self-annihilation. The simple fact is, if we wanted to annihilate ourselves right now, we have we don't need AGI to destroy the planet in short order.
Yeah.
We have the tools right now.
Yeah.
We can do it, right? And so you have to explain why we are still here, despite we already have godlike powers in our hands, the power to destroy at a level that is unfathomable to most people. And yet we have a society walked forward. And I see every day people who are so invested in ensuring that work, that thankless work that doesn't make the headlines, that doesn't get people hysterical and running with their head with their hair on fire. I see people every day working to bring about that positive outcome.
Yeah.
And I see that I have to work so much harder to find them than the people who are screaming about stop everything, the entire world is about to collapse. And so as long as that's the case, I will be worried when I start seeing that it is easier for me to find the people who are doing the good work than the people who are yelling fire. That to me, that world is a bit murkier, because I know that the human instinct is to focus on the negative. That's an important element of who we are. That's how we have been able to survive.
Yeah.
From the savannah.
Yeah, it's an amygdala's evolution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your brain wants you to survive, and therefore it wants you to avoid danger, right? But we have to be balanced, and we have to understand that the benefits that are on the table are not frivolous. We've just been discussing, in a world where you can go down to the ER anytime, and get healthcare, where you can trust that the person sitting across the table is qualified, and will do their best to give you a good diagnosis. Whether they do or not is a separate question. In a world where you can open the tap and drink the water that comes out of it and not get diarrhea, in a world where you can flick a switch and know that the power will come on, it's difficult to see why we would take the risk, right? But that is obscuring the fact that this is a very narrow slice of society
Right.
that has those things. Africa has 1.2 billion people. By 2025, by 2050, it will be half of the world's working age population.
Yeah, that's
will be on the continent. What happens when that working age population doesn't have electricity?
Mm-hmm.
And what is our plan to get there?
Mm-hmm.
This drive towards abundance that we are in right now, I think, is not just necessary. It is essential if those people are to feel invested in the world that we have built and to be contributing positively to it.
Yeah.
Because as it stands right now, we are inevitably going to end up in a zero-sum environment,
Mm-hmm.
because we're going to not have enough to go around.
Right.
And that risk is way bigger than any risk of, I don't know how,
All right.
in
The HAL 3000
of destroying humanity.
Right. Right.
Especially because also I don't know. I for me, the most realistic depiction of what, and AGI might be is that movie Her, where they just they get bored and they leave. Because it speaks to not that would happen, is that to project human desires onto something that scale feels like folly, which is why, again, I try to focus on the immediate. What are the things that if we achieve abundance, the basic simple things that when we achieve abundance will be available to all, and how can it transform them?
Right.
A reliable diagnosis for your disease.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to access energy whenever you need it at almost no cost. The ability to have an essentially infinite cognitive reserve at your disposal to learn anything that you want to learn to whatever level you want to learn it.
Yeah.
Those things are priceless.
Yeah.
And they are just not available to too many people. And there is no path anywhere in our lifetimes to getting it to the majority of humanity without this drive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Totally agree. And in terms of you personally, like how old are you now?
Today's my birthday. I'm turning 41.
Oh,
yeah.
Today's your birthday? Awesome, man. Thanks for doing this on your birthday. That's really kind.
Yeah.
How do you see your life unfolding given what's at stake over this next 10 to 15 years? Like, what are you doing to put it all on the field, like for humanity, whether that's in Kenya or here, or where are you placing your energy to help us get there?
Well, first into the kids. They're the direct.
By the way, I tell everybody,
yes,
there's nothing harder than I've ever done than trying to raise kids. Like, it's much easier to start a company. And it's so funny because
most in it for the long haul. You don't get to IPO, you don't get to
sell. That's so funny. No. It's a lifetime. It's a lifetime commitment.
Exactly. So, them definitely. And I mean, they, because, just seeing them grow and discover the world is super profound. And then I as you know, I work in energy. Right now I work, I basically do power markets forecasting, helping energy developers get financing for the energy assets that they're building. And I was at a conference a few months ago, and somebody said that energy is the rev limiter to AI. And I thought that was a very succinct way of connecting, the AI revolution to the work that we're doing. Because right now, the only thing that the person who, with all the money in the world, cannot get is enough energy to power a data center. It's easier to get your hands on NVIDIA's latest chips than to get the gigawatts of power that are necessary to power those chips. It's gotten to a point where, if you want a gas turbine from GE or Siemens or Mitsubishi, and you have the money right now, these are, multi-$100 million, billion-dollar deals. You have to wait 7 years.
Wow.
You have the money. Like if somebody was to give you the turbine now, but that's the wait list.
Wow.
Right? And so if we want to do this in 10 years, we're going to have to figure out where the power is going to come from between now and when that wait list gets whittled down, which it will. You're already seeing people like Mitsubishi saying they're going to double they have like a $32 billion order backlog.
Wow.
That they're doubling their capacity to meet. So I support developers that are looking to get financing for these projects, because as you mentioned, it's hundreds of $millions. Usually 60% of that is debt from a bank, and the bank wants to know that the numbers for your asset make sense, and so they need an independent third party to kick the tires on those numbers, and that's us. Especially because those numbers need to make sense over 25-year forecast horizon. So what are prices of power going to be in 2050? That's another hard question for these people. So that's one thing that I'm doing. Supporting and investing in the progress movement in any way that I can, whether that's consuming materials from the Progress Network, the Roots of Progress Institute, all these people who are at the coalface, people like Casey Handmer that we mentioned before, who are working on directly synthesizing fossil fuels from air and water, seeing what they're working on and supporting in any way we can, and then trying to make sure that in all this conversation, Africa does not get lost. Because, for better or for worse, the future is African. Because it's the only continent that is actually growing in terms of population.
All right.
Right? We have, a very serious demographic challenge on the horizon. Most developed countries, and many developing countries, including countries like Iran and Bangladesh, are struggling to maintain replacement rate in terms of population.
All right.
And so a larger and larger proportion of the humans that are going to be on this planet on 2050 and beyond are going to be Africans, most of them in Africa. And so when we talk about an abundant future for all,
Right.
we are largely talking about these people.
Yep.
And so if they're not part of the conversation, then we are writing stories about people who are not in the room, and that is not bound to end well. So whenever I can, speak on the role of Africa in this future, I try to do so.
Yeah. So I want to talk about just with the scale of the challenge and with the fact that a lot of countries are locked into this kind of zero-sum mindset, this battle between the U.S. saying, if we get AGI before China, we're going to subjugate China. If China gets AGI before us, they're going to subjugate us. And just this kind of ridiculous notion that we currently have because of the way we've evolved and the governments we have. I just find the whole thing almost laughably ridiculous in a world of 8.2 billion people. And my thesis here is that we're going to hit a precipice in the future. Like right now, the race is on. There was just the White House dinner last week where over $2 trillion was pledged by some of the most, prominent tech leaders in the United States. That just happened last week. And I think that the race being on right now is a very good thing because technology is the catalyst to create the abundance. But at some point, like we're going to be able to see over the horizon and see this future of abundance for all, like the end of disease, near unlimited energy, and we're going to have the free will to make a choice. And so much of humanity is going to have access to artificial superintelligence, not just AGI, but ASI. And we have the free will to decide what to do with that.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, like geopolitically, how you see it playing out for how are we going to wake up and realize we have to work together as opposed to this subjugation type of mindset?
Well, one, I hope that we do. I think what's dangerous about it, is just the same thing that makes me skeptical of utopian visions. Is the same thing that makes me skeptical of like dystopian visions.
Mm-hmm.
It too often becomes a tool to apply ends justifies the means thinking. Because if what is on the horizon is utopia, everybody's equal and everybody has everything that they need, what's a few more people, trampled under the hoof of this machine, for this amazing future that we have. And it's the same thing with dystopia. If what's at risk is the annihilation of all of humanity, what's a few bombs dropped here and there, to prevent that? And that's what I don't like about this race dynamic, because thought experiment. 2 years from now, we get incontrovertible evidence beyond the shadow of a doubt that China is 2 weeks away from AGI, and we are 2 months away. What do we do?
Yeah. I mean, I think that in that scenario, we continue to race along, but we probably start to say like, hey, we better partner. We better partner.
Somebody will be like, this is the thing, and that's the problem, because people keep imagining these deals that they will present to China. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what incentive does China have to agree to this deal? Because you wouldn't agree to this deal if the situation was flipped, if the US was 2 weeks away and China was 2 months away. So why should they agree? So I think in that situation, people are like, at launch, you start taking destructive action to try and prevent that last 2 weeks from being crossed. And that is really where we spiral into the bad scenario that we're trying to avoid, right? And I find it becomes too easy for people to start presenting that as the lesser of two evils when we have this hyper-competitive dynamic, right? Because, say, in 2 weeks, they're going to have this thing that is going to keep them ahead of us for forever. Then they're going to subjugate us. and then it will be a terrible future for humanity. So we need to bomb them now or whatever, and a situation where that type of thinking rules the roost just tilts the scales towards you're not going to make it, right? The difficulty is that, as you mentioned, within reason, a race to the top makes sense, right? Because it keeps people engaged. It's what actually fuels the necessary investment, to keep this machine going. So then how do we achieve balance? How do we create a condition where we have positive, friendly competition as opposed to this destructive rivalry, where people make these blithe statements about, what China will do and how we and under all circumstances must prevent them from achieving X thing, otherwise it's the end of the world, and imagining to ourselves what what deal we should put in front of China, knowing very well that if that deal was presented to us, we would reject it out of hand as a uncalled for constraint on our national sovereignty. So I don't think that any sort of dialogue with China or India or any other country that is predicated on some sort of dictation of terms has any legs, will go anywhere. And I think that too much of the discourse is in that vein. I really like the push that you're seeing with the open source movement.
Yeah, I was just about to go there.
Yeah, and Bill Gurley talks a lot about this, as we've talked about it in the past.
Yeah, great podcast. The BG Squared podcast is
Absolutely,
fantastic.
Absolutely amazing. And this is what he keeps harping on. We talk about these countries as if they're machines. They're human beings there, just like you and me, who wake up in the morning, they have their kids, they hug them, they go to the office, they do work. We're not automatons, there are things being pulled by some, nefarious cabal. They have a different system running there, but it is composed of human beings just like you and me. Right. And so we have to start relating as if we are relating with humans, as opposed to relating with systems.
Yes.
And you're starting to see this with the spread of the open source movement, because people are engaging at a human level, and it helps them filter through this. Great power politics can be very dehumanizing, because it is necessary to obfuscate the individuals who are going to have to take the actions that are being prescribed. And so I guess my main prescription on the geopolitical front is to bring the scale down as much as possible to the individual. And a good way to do that is to empower the individual to do as much of what the organization can do. And open source is a very powerful tool for doing that. Because then what was only possible for $1 billion corporation with the $100 million training run 6 months ago can be run on somebody's desktop with a 6-month delay. And as long as you keep pushing those capabilities down as far as possible, one, it stops. It makes the whole idea of controlling this from some sort of central office in the White House a moot point. It's impossible.
Well, I covered this earlier on the podcast, but to me, it's obvious at this point that open source is going to win.
Yeah.
And the reason it's obvious is that it was January 21st that President Trump announced Stargate, which was $500 billion of funding. He announced that alongside Mayoshi-san, Sam Altman, and Larry Ellison. And we are so far past the Stargate moment.
Yeah.
I mean, like just last week, again, over $2 trillion pledged towards this race by the biggest tech leaders in the United States. And, you know, this amount of money, just the Stargate amount of money, which is an incredible amount of money, is more inflation adjusted than we spent on the Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
And it's more inflation adjusted than we spent on the space race versus the Russians. So, but the day before, January 20th, you cannot script this, like better for TV. That's when China announced DeepSeek's R1 model, which is vastly more powerful than GPT-4 was, which triggered the moratorium call in March of 2023. 4 months after the launch of ChatGPT. And so you have vastly more powerful technology announced the day before. It took the market a week to realize it, and that's when NVIDIA lost $600 billion in market cap that next week. But what we've actually learned in the way these models work is that once you've distilled the weights, they're portable. And they're cheap. You could put it on a hard drive. Actually, our youngest child is running 5 open source models on their computer, like right now. And that is stunning to me. That is a very big blessing. And one way you could look at that, because we can't know like what were the Chinese government thinking in making an announcement. But one way you could look at it is it's an olive branch to humanity. That would be a very charitable way of looking at it. I hope that that's the case. But that was an olive branch the day before the Stargate announcement. So let's pray that is in fact the case. But I really think it will be. And by the way, it doesn't mean that frontier models won't have a huge outcome. I mean, you know, OpenAI today is at over 12 billion of ARR. And again, they launched ChatGPT just a bit over 1,000 days ago. Anthropic is at over 5 billion of ARR. I mean, you know, they launched after ChatGPT. As a matter of fact, it was former OpenAI people that went there. So the milestones being reached by these frontier models were really unprecedented. We've never seen companies grow this fast. But I think it's a great outcome for humanity that open source is pretty obvious is going to win.
And we have to understand that it is in the interest of, OpenAI and its investors to imagine, perhaps even believe that this is a winner-take-all game, because that is the outcome that maximizes their return. But that doesn't mean that is the reality on the ground. You know, I mean, I remember when people were saying, calculating the value of Tesla based on its self-driving and imagining that, it's going to be the best self-driving. So nobody will want any other type of self-driving. Obviously, everybody will want this self-driving, but the use cases for this technology are so broad. And it is not the case that everybody is always going to be, for every situation, in running the frontier model in the latest hardware to solve their problem. Most problems are going to be solved by models that run on people's phones, that are not the bleeding edge, because the marginal return from that extra amount of intelligence is negligible relative to the problem that's being solved. And so as these solutions spread and more open source expands, and as it seems the time between the release of a new frontier model and the release of comparable open source models shrinks. I think as long as that continues to happen, your thesis
I mean, that's actually why I don't, going back to the scenario where we know China is like 2 weeks away, et cetera. I just don't even think that's realistic because these models are so neck and neck.
Yeah.
And there's so much, there's so much talent movement
Yes.
that has the knowledge of how they work
Exactly.
all over the world.
It
That,
builds heads.
yeah, that I don't think it's going to happen that way. I think if OpenAI is the first to create AGI, I think Anthropic's a week behind, and DeepSeek's like a week behind that, or maybe a week. I mean, it's just not going to matter, I don't think. This breakout scenario of like, someone's going to get AGI and it's such a head start that nobody can catch up. And then that leads that one company to create artificial superintelligence. And then that leads that one company to create godlike intelligence that then rules the world. I just don't think that's the way. I don't even think that's realistic. Like this is so fundamental to what will be the operating system for humanity. That it's too good not to share. You know what I mean? It's like in the tribal days, if your tribe had fire, you're still going to share it with me. And one thing that's amazing from the genealogical records, I had to fact check this because this is Byron Reese telling me this. He's one of my favorite authors, one of my best friends. He said, 50 to 70,000 years ago, we're down to 800 humans on Earth. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. So like most people don't know that. I didn't know that at the time, by the way. And I had to like go fact check it. And it was because we're in the Ice Age. And there was a super volcano, a near extinction event. The skies were blackened and we're suffering in the cold already. And we were down to, it was somewhere between 800 and several thousand people. And we know this from the genealogical records. Like your and my DNA is almost identical. Because this was like the seed for all of us today. And if our core nature was to be evil, it would have been over. Human experiment done like 50 to 70,000 years ago. So I think our core nature is loving. It's the programming that we have to overcome. This deep level of programming that babies don't have, that it's like, US versus China, or, man versus woman, or this race versus that race, and all this stuff that, this religion versus that religion, that just is man-made junk, human-made stuff that we just need to deprogram and get back to our divine nature. The fact that we're genetically almost all identical. I mean, it's like the 99.99. I mean, that's part of the collective wake up. The hardest part about this book I'm writing, honestly, is part 3. Transformation is like, how do we transform? So it's one thing I'm thinking really deeply about right now. But I do think there's a consciousness awakening happening.
I believe it. And honestly, first of all, if that wasn't true, we wouldn't have made it this far as a species, And I think people are hungry for that type of awakening. Like we've seen what being cut off from each other, feels like, most viscerally with what happened with the COVID pandemic. We had a real life experiment of what it feels like not to have human to human contact. And I think that's
such a good point.
Has made,
because it's so recent.
It's so recent, and it's visceral, and people felt it in their bones. This thing that we took for granted. Just being able to meet with other people.
Right.
We felt what that isolation could do to us, and I think it then triggered the question. Shouldn't we be a little more intentional, about trying to build these connections, and to reach each other across this gap, this divide that we have created, and to see each other as human.
One thing I want to close on, because I know we're short on time now. I wouldn't be doing my job in Austin, given that we're in Austin, if I didn't talk to you about the University of Austin, UATX. And the reason I think it's important to talk about is that you were in the first ever program there. and you're my only close friend who has actually been in the school as a student.
Yeah.
I very close with Pano, who is now the chancellor, and I know Joe Lonsdale well also.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's so cool that that's happening in Austin, because what people watching this that aren't from Austin don't realize about Austin is that a lot of things have been birthed from Austin. Like we are constantly trying new things. And I'm just curious if you can tell me a little bit about that experience and what it was like for you.
It was great. What was funny is that when I went to that program, I was actually still in Kenya. So it was a hybrid program with, stints in Austin and stints in Kenya. And I would fly from Kenya to Austin. Actually, the first session was in Dallas, and then the second one,
I remember that.
Yeah, was in Austin, and I would fly back and forth for the program. And so the question, why was I doing this to myself? Because it's a pretty, as for those who don't know, it's like a 24-hour flight.
Yeah.
From
It makes me think a little bit like that trudging through the snow at Harvard. So I've been there at 6:45 a.m.
Indeed. Yes. And the answer is simply that I want them to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to succeed, especially because I know how hard it is, one, to birth a new institution, one with a mission, as ambitious as a fearless pursuit of truth, and avoid the pitfalls of either just becoming the opposite of what you are trying to push against, or just becoming a lukewarm institution. Because I'm a big, believer in, the golden mean, that the solution to most things lies in the middle, and that balance is really important, right? And so when you have a mission such as the pursuit of a fearless pursuit of truth, and you feel like the existing institutions have skewed too much in one direction, and you want to be a corrective, the initial instinct is to flip and be the opposite.
Right.
But that's not where the truth lies.
Right.
The truth lies in a fair consideration of both sides. Because these, as much as we like to imagine, people on either side are not crazy.
Right.
They're just human beings, and their life experience, and their circumstances have brought them to the conclusion that where they stand is the right place to be. And unfortunately, too often it then becomes an excuse to demonize whoever is on the opposite side.
Right.
And so to build an institution that does not engage in hyperbole in either direction suffers from the same challenge that building a news organization that's not sensationalizing things, because it's unsexy, and it's hard. And you have to constantly be annoying people on both sides. And you need the support of the people on both sides in order to succeed. And so I was like, this is such an ambitious mission. And it's hard. Honestly, I was like, it's probably going to fail. But I really wanted to succeed, and so I'm going to participate. I'm not just going to be sitting on the sidelines and saying, it's too hard, they're going to fail.
Right.
I'm going to step in. I'm going to, one, experience it for myself, to validate for myself that this is actually the mission that they're on, that in the programming, they're not just flipping from one extreme to the other, and they're actually trying to teach you how to think from the ground up, as opposed to teach you what to think.
Right.
And I was very pleasantly surprised to find that was in fact the case.
Yeah.
That they brought together an incredible, very talented, very accomplished group of people. And I can honestly say I was not once preached to about why UATX's position is the right position, or those guys have it wrong. The entire program was a consideration of questions like, how do we come to know the things that we know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what makes good leadership? How does good leadership fail?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what what tools do we have to discern truth? You know, and to have the confidence in your student body to give them those tools and send them off, you know, to find the answers wherever they lie, I think speaks volumes and speaks to people who are actually dedicated to the outcome. Because, you know, just like everybody else, they have their own beliefs about what the truth is. Right? And the instinct is to impart that on the people who you are engaging with, and to have the intellectual humility and the integrity to restrain yourself from that impulse and instead provide the tools and allow people to come to their own conclusions is sorely lacking, in my view, in most academic programs.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing a good job of it.
And, you know, just speaking to some humility that I had with it, because I'm not perfect, not even close.
Yeah.
You know, I actually succumbed at the beginning to, I saw the cancel culture kind of firestorm when it was launching, and it was getting ridden off as like a far right bastion.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, well, I'll just, you know, kind of write that one off in my mind. And I was really embarrassed, because I'm involved in programming for this Jewish Austin men's gathering. It's like the largest gathering of Jewish men in Texas, actually. You know, there's lots of women's gatherings, and so we have this men's gathering. And Pano was one of our speakers. And at that point, he was the president. Now he's the chancellor. And I was so moved by that presentation. And I thought, man, I also have programming. That I was programmed, and I succumbed to the program. And I am fiercely independent, you know, politically. And I stand actually where you do too. Like, I'm very in the center in the way I look at things. The world is very gray. It's like it's not just this is right or wrong, et cetera. There's some things, like, you know, that are clearly wrong. But there's a lot of gray, and actually the more the older I get, the more I see the gray in so many things, that you really need to approach things with a deep level of humility and empathy to understand. But man, the swarm came out, like, trying to make sure that nobody paid attention to this thing. It actually worked on me. I was very embarrassed to say. And so I righted that with writing this super long distillation of why it was so perfect for Austin, and quoting Willie Nelson and the beginning where he's like, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, we just kick back and have a beer and talk about all the things we have in common, because you know what? We have most things in common. And that actually is the way of the world. That's humanity, actually, in a nutshell. Is that a big part of what humanity needs to get to is realizing how much we are, again, genetically almost identical, and how much we care about the same things. We ultimately just want, like, a good life, you know, like, we want to love our kids. We want to celebrate our birthdays. That's part of the reason I need to let you go here. And, you know, just be the beautiful, divine creatures that we are. And create a better world together.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this was a real pleasure, my friend.
Such a pleasure.
I really, really enjoyed it.
This is
thanks for the friendship. And thanks for the long hikes, and thanks everybody again for tuning in to Love Conquers Fear. I absolutely love this conversation with my good buddy John. This really mimics, like, what we do on hikes together. And stay tuned. We have just an incredible lineup of scientists coming up. entrepreneurs, amazing investors, philosophers, and spiritual teachers. And I can't wait to share all that with you. And I'm really enjoying this and hope you are too. Thanks a lot.